You might not think it's that fun to hop into an EV and drive all day, but I do, and that's why I'm a little bit weird, but it's also why I'm excited to be here with this. The refreshed version of Porsche's first EV, and today, we're gonna find out just how far it'll go. Wait, haven't I done this already? And today, we're gonna find out just how far it'll go. Oh. Now, much like the Macan EV that we range tested before, this is a prototype vehicle. As I mentioned, it's a 24 Taycan, and this is actually a 4S in the 20-inch wheels with the larger battery. Now, that's identical to the setup of a vehicle that we tested previously, and that vehicle produced one of the most out-of-bounds range tests that we've ever had here at Edmunds. It's only EPA rated at 203 miles. It ended up going 323 miles on our test, which is about 60% over what its EPA range said that it should. I don't know what we're going to achieve today with this vehicle because we don't really know that many details about it. Porsche hasn't actually told us yet what the changes are for the refreshed Taycan. So we don't know if it's going to have a bigger battery. We don't know if it has different motors. We don't even know if it has any different charging infrastructure either. So a lot of unknowns today, but hopefully through the power of math, at the end of the day, we can sort of take the numbers that we're getting back from the vehicle and figure out what that range and what that battery size might actually be. Now, what we're going to do today is going to be a little bit different than we do in your sort of regular world famous Edmunds EV range test. We're going to be doing pretty much all highway miles, just like we did in the Macan, and that's different than our usual testing, which incorporates city and highway driving to give you a more accurate real world figure. Today in the Taycan, though, we do think that it's going to do pretty well in this test because it has underneath it a 2-speed transmission. Now, Porsche hasn't confirmed any mechanical details on the refreshed Taycan, but I don't see them going away from that like they did in the Macan EV. So I actually think that because it has that 2-speed transmission, which we've known in the Taycan to actually make it pretty efficient on the highway for an EV, we could see range here upwards of 300 miles, and that would be a very good figure for just on the highway. Now, the Macan EV, we do know that comes with a 100 kilowatt hour battery. This vehicle we do know has the larger battery, but Porsche hasn't told us how big that battery might be, and that's again one thing we're going to try to sort of extrapolate from the results of this test. Not really much else to say. Let's get behind the wheel and get going. Similar to the Macan EV range test we went on recently, this was also a prototype drive. So these cars were not quite production ready, even though the drivetrains are locked in. So even though I would love to provide more details about the car, how it drove, what new features we noticed, etc., unfortunately, Taycan. That joke aside, some of these details will be available when Porsche more officially introduces the refreshed Taycan at a date in the near future. Our drive route for the day took us from near our offices in Los Angeles all the way down past San Diego to the US-Mexico border, and then all the way back up to a fast charging station in Torrance. There was a bit more city driving on our route than there was with the Macan EV, so the average speed didn't quite match the over 60 miles an hour that we got on that test, but it was still much faster than we typically travel on the Edmunds EV range test. Joining me on this drive was Stefan Christian, the Taycan's program director who flew all the way over from Germany just to be stuck with me for most of the day. Sorry, dude. As for the Taycan 4S we drove, we set the climate control at 72 degrees on auto in its eco setting, as we do for our own testing, and this was enough to keep the cabin comfortable on a pleasant day. We drove the vehicle in its range drive setting, which also moves the air suspension into its lowest setting, and that makes the car just about as aerodynamic as it can get. There were a few things though that were different about this test than our normal setup. Porsche says that the tires were inflated to the maximum allowable pressure, while we used the recommended tire pressures, and we also drove with the regenerative braking off. We'd usually use a higher regenerative braking setting than that, but Porsche said that they think the coasting that you get with the regen off would be the most optimal setup for this test with all of its highway miles. So after just over 6 hours behind the wheel, we've run the Taycan all the way down to where it has only 16 miles of range remaining. And in that time, it covered 327 miles, giving us a total range for this test of 343 miles. That's a really impressive result considering that our average speed was about 55 miles an hour, and that's a lot higher than we go for on our Edmunds range test. So really encouraged by that result. Also impressive was the vehicle's consumption. It was well under 30 kilowatt hours per 100 miles, which means it's very efficient with the energy it uses, much more efficient than even the Taycan 4S that we tested previously. Now, for the other exciting figure that we have, Porsche, again, hasn't told us much details about this Taycan. They haven't even told us what the max charging rate is, but we're here at an Electrify America charging station to see just how fast this thing can charge and figure out with how much energy is added maybe just how big that battery actually is. Let's start with charging speed. The previous Taycan maxed out at a charging speed of 270 kilowatts, and I had an inkling that the refreshed vehicle might be capable of much more, because otherwise, why would Porsche set this up? When the vehicle was parked with 6% battery, the display indicated a max charging acceptance rate of 270 kilowatts, but I saw a number higher than that while we were out on the drive, and as it started to fill up, it blew past that figure. At around 35% charge, the charger topped out at a rate of 332 kilowatts, which is lightning fast and well above the capabilities of the previous Taycan. In a little over 20 minutes, the Taycan charged from 6 to 83% battery and added 260 miles of range, which, if we convert that, adds up to 780 miles of range added per hour. These are figures that we can't wait to verify once we get the new Taycan in and can test those speeds to see where it ends up on our Edmunds charging leaderboard. But those figures would put it somewhere near the very top. Now for the battery size. The charger reported that it put in 83 kilowatts of energy to fill up 77% of the battery. So if we do a little math, that translates to around 108 kilowatts to fill the entire battery up. The previous Taycan 4S had about 9% charging loss, so if we assume a similar figure, we'd end up with a usable battery capacity of roughly 98 kilowatt hours. Now, the previous Taycan also had a gap of 8 to 9 kilowatt hours between its usable capacity and the battery's net capacity, so our best guess at the battery size for this updated Taycan, it falls right around 106 kilowatt hours. And that would be a big improvement over the existing battery pack, which tops out at 93 kilowatt hours of capacity. We're back at the hotel where we started, and however you want to add things up, it's been a really impressive showing for this vehicle. The refreshed 25 Taycan seems to have a bigger battery, more range, and even faster charging speeds than before. Now, to get the news officially from Porsche, you're gonna have to wait a little bit longer, I'm afraid, but this experience, much like the one with the Macan EV, just makes me even more excited to get one of these in so we can put it on the official Edmunds EV range test and charging test to see where this vehicle ends up on our leaderboard. And again, like and subscribe if you don't want to miss those things, and stay tuned for even more cars content from Edmunds.